Have you ever noticed that when you try to prove you're good at your job, even though you're really not, you may end up being rightfully punished for costing other people the same job, considering those other people did nothing wrong in the first place? Well, that's what Lynn found out in the episode I'm going to talk about today. So join me as I, SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, bring you another retro review from past seasons of The Loud House. Cue the intro! Today's episode is Sitting Bull. In this episode, Lynn tries to be a babysitter like her older sisters, but proves to be too aggressive for the job. When this first came out, I never really thought too much about it because the way Lynn was presented was pretty much consistent with who she was as a character. However, the more I watched it and the more I analyzed the story, I realized it was the right presentation, but it had the wrong takeaway message. Plus, it was an example where the writers wanted you to feel bad for the main character, in this case Lynn, and to condemn her older sisters as the antagonists, and yet you actually feel the opposite. Lori, Lenny, Luna, and Luann all knew Lynn was anything but gentle and nurturing, as they saw when she was being reckless around her younger siblings. That's why I wasn't the least bit surprised when they turned to Lincoln to offer him his first non-Loud family babysitting gig. Outside of 2 boys and a baby, he has proven himself to be a lot gentler and more nurturing than Lynn. However, Lynn thinks her brother doesn't deserve to be next in line because she's older and her big sister started doing babysitting when they were 13. But regardless, she is given the chance to babysit for 2 kids, and she makes the experience very painful and uncomfortable for them both. As a result, the McCaulays fire not just Lynn, but they also fire her other sisters as well. Lynn is called out on how her behavior lost them a good client, and her sisters decide she can no longer be part of their babysitting club. And rightfully so. Not wanting to accept defeat and wanting to prove she's got what it takes, Lynn secretly snatches up other babysitting opportunities without her sister's knowledge. Her older sisters check up on their usual clients to find out why they haven't been calling for their services, and once again they find out they've all been fired because of Lynn. First off, I don't see the logic in those parents firing all the Louds when their problem was only with Lynn. I don't understand why they couldn't just tell Lori and the others they will only accept babysitting services from the Loud family if the one doing the job is not Lynn. The 4 older sisters did nothing wrong, let alone not being given a chance to explain the situation, and the more trustworthy sisters get unnecessarily punished because of Lynn. I think you can see why many people, including myself, didn't like the way Lynn was acting in this episode. She was the true antagonist, and there's no way you can prove she wasn't. That's when her older sisters decide to teach her a lesson in the hopes that she'll never want to do babysitting ever again. They have her babysit for the worst kids they ever had to deal with, the Fox quintuplets. It was a very justified form of punishment, and Lynn rightfully deserved it. However, her older sisters started to feel bad when they thought about what they were going to put her through. But why though? They weren't the ones who were traumatizing and injuring little kids. It wasn't their fault their clients decided to fire them as their regular babysitters. That was all 100% on Lynn, and remember, she did say she could nurture all day long. If she wants that babysitting money, she should be able to undertake any sort of kid, no matter how destructive they might be. So no, the older sisters should not have felt guilty, and they had the right idea of having Lynn look after the quintuplets. Regardless, they still showed up at the Fox house ready to help Lynn take care of those kids, but surprisingly, Lynn had them all under control. She explained how she was able to calm them down and wear them out because she could be just as crazy as them. That's when her sisters revealed they set up this gig in the attempt to get Lynn to quit babysitting, and then Lori said something I really hated. She said those other kids Lynn was babysitting before were not the right kind of kids for her. I don't think so. I get what Lori was saying because she, Lenny, Luna, and Luann couldn't handle the rowdy Fox kids, but Lynn could because she was rowdy herself. While I understood what they were going for, that's still a bad reflection of Lynn's character. The episode wants the viewer to believe there's nothing wrong with the way Lynn conducts herself, and she doesn't need to change the way she acts. In other words, the writers try to get you to believe Lynn doesn't need to improve upon any sort of flaw to her character. I'm sorry, I just don't like like that message. The fact is, Lynn never once contemplated how she acted in all her previous babysitting gigs and how her behavior caused her sisters to lose their usual clients. She never once considered trying to control her aggressiveness if it meant having more babysitting gigs that aren't just strictly the Fox quintuplets. Basically, she's the same character at the end of the story as she was in the beginning, having not learned anything throughout the course of the episode and continues to be crazy and reckless as if nothing had happened. Now do you see why Lynn gets a lot of hate in this episode? Sure, she does apologize for stealing work from her sisters and she does get their old clients back, but again, she never changes anything in her behavior. She never learns to be the gentle and nurturing type like her sisters, and that's greatly reinforced when she talks about giving their clients apology punches. Like I said, she is the true antagonist, and her older sisters are the ones you should feel sorry for, and going based on how the story plays out, that's made as clear can be. Overall, this episode is among Lynn's worst performances of the series. When you have a character who has a very noticeable flaw, and there's never a moment where they reflect upon that flaw and vow to make a change for the better, then what exactly was the point of them going through all those trials and tribulations? The takeaway message is basically saying Lynn can be a good babysitter, but only if she looks after kids who are effectively miniature versions of herself. In my opinion, that's an awful lesson. That's pretty much saying Lynn never has to change anything about herself, and that's kind of frightening if she ever had kids of her own one day. Hell, we can only imagine how she would handle herself as the Loud family babysitter, and we saw a few glimpses of that at the beginning of the episode. Her older sisters were objectively the only good characters of the story, and their reactions and responses to what Lynn was doing to their babysitting service were completely justified. Even though Lori technically gave Lynn the green light on how her behavior can be a good thing so long as it's used on the Fox kids, she and her three younger sisters all got their jobs back without the threat of Lynn ruining anything going forward. Then again, this whole babysitting club is never really brought up again following this episode besides that one time in Coop Dreams, but this episode did introduce the running gag of Lynn using the name Stinkin' when referring to her brother. It can be an annoying gag, but I'm honestly not too bothered about it as much as I used to be. So if you're looking for a good Lynn episode and or want to see a character undergo a change in their behavior if it means learning a lesson and bettering themselves, you're definitely not going to find any of that here. With that said, I give Sitting Bull a 4.4 out of 10. Well folks, that concludes my review of Sitting Bull. So I gotta ask, what did you guys think of this episode? Sound off in the comments below, and be sure to click that subscribe button for more Loud House related content. That's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys for the next video, but until then, this is SteamTeamRedubUK, CC Trainor-Ling, signing off. Peace out, home slices.